Johnny Bench has tied it up. The Cincinnati Reds win the World Series in 4 straight. It was a sweep.
In the dirt, it's a wild pitch. Here comes Foster. The Reds win the pennant.
Perkins won the game.
That ball is fair. Cincinnati's ahead. 2 games to none.
Welcome Joe Randa to Cincinnati. Adam Dunn has done it again.
Benzinger backing and calling. And the 1990 World Championship belongs to the Cincinnati Reds.
Marty, yes. This is Adam from Milwaukee. Hey, Adam, how you doing? I'm good. How are you? Good. Do you think Scott Hatteberg's a good player?
Dunn up there with the bases loaded, the outfield deep and around toward right, and the 1-0 on the way to the plate. Swung on, long drive, right field, and this one belongs to the Reds.
And a high drive, hit back into deep right field. Junior has just knocked the door down to the 500 club.
Benson's first home run is a walk-off winner. That ball had a family.
And De La Cruz is, oh my goodness, look at this kid run. My, oh my, that is a triple.
Matt McClain's first big league bomb.
Spencer Steer's first big league hit is a home run to straightaway center field. Joey Votto's done it again.
The pitch. Votto swings high in the air. Right field. Yes! He pointed to the dugout to say, I told you. That is Joey Votto's 315th career go-ahead ribby. Only Johnny Bench had more as a Red.
And I can't tell you how much it means to play in front of everyone here in Cincinnati as a Red. What a gift. What a tremendous gift. So thank you. Thank you.
I think I can speak for all of Reds country. Joey Votto, thank you.
High drive. Left center field. Racing back to the line. Bourgeois. The Reds are National League Central Division champions. In the air, left center field. Did he? Did he? He did. He did. Red win. Win. Line in the right field. Genius, the first Red ever. With 4 home runs in a game. Can you believe it? In the air, down the right field line. Does it have a chance? The Reds have won on a 3-run home run on opening day by Ramon Hernandez. A strike away and out away is Homer Bailey. Ground ball to third. Frazier gloves. Throw to first and Homer Bailey for the second time in his major league career tossed the no-hitter. Oh, gosh. Are you kidding me? Holy Moses, the second player in major league history to hit 7 home runs in the first 10 games. In the air and the Reds win. What a dream beginning to the career of Jay Bruce.
A Monday Night Live edition of Chatterbox Reds, and we got the whole crew on board. You know what that means. Big news breaking in Reds Nation and continuing to develop, if we're being honest, guys. Before we jump into it, let's give a quick shout out to Deep South Commodities, our presenting sponsor, DSC. Nick, go.
DSC, they are a leader in renewable commodities for biofuel production, specializing in used cooking oil collection, aggregation, and sales. Visit www.deepsouthcommodities.com for more information. Thanks, as always, to our friends at DSC.
Thanks to DSC. Trace, how are we doing tonight? Welcome in.
I'm doing relatively well. I've been fighting a cold, so I think I'm on the upward trajectory, though. I think maybe one more sleep, and I think I'm going to be back to close enough to 100%.
Well, we appreciate you fighting through it for us for this live edition of Chatterbox Reds. Look, let's get into it. Everybody in the chat, over 300 already. They want to know what's going on. Quite frankly, I think we want to know what's going on. Still some news that is yet to be determined here. What we do know is that the Cincinnati Reds have acquired Los Angeles Dodgers second baseman Gavin Lux. Reportedly, they are sending recent draft pick Mike Sirota along with another draft pick back to the Dodgers in exchange. Before we get into the other kind of rumors that are floating around right now, let's start with what we know. Trace, your immediate reaction to the Reds adding Gavin Lux to their 2025 roster?
Honestly, I think they just got Jonathan India back. That's kind of what I thought, in a little bit of a way. I know that some people might disagree with that, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that's relatively what they got back. And interesting enough, Sirota is a guy that obviously the Dodgers like. Trying to get an idea of like why they decided to go down this path. Reports seem that maybe the Dodgers are going to get Kim in the offseason here. That's the speculation. And as a part of that, they wanted to move Lux, and they actually drafted Sirota in the 16th round in 2021. So they didn't get him. He didn't go. And then all of a sudden now they've dipped their hand back in there to get Sirota. So I guess they got their guy. Now, I don't know if he's an executive grandson or something, and that's why they need to get him. That's a little bit of a joke there. But ultimately, you know, I'll say this about Gavin Lux. He's a big league player, and you don't always get that with prospects. Like, as much as we want to talk about prospects and how we, you know, kind of, at least this group does, kind of want to hold on to them more times than not, because what you get in return for prospects traditionally is average players at best. Gavin Lux has proved that he plays for a very good organization, and he's played when healthy, obviously. So I don't know the whole thing, but I almost made a joke that the Reds basically got Singer in a deal for all these guys that we just traded away, basically because that's essentially what they got. In my opinion, we got Gavin Lux back for what we lost in Jonathan India, and I'm still fearful that our defense is going to suffer, but we'll see.
Yeah, essentially what people are saying right now is based on kind of the trades that have happened and the comparisons between India and Gavin Lux is that you essentially gave up Mike Sirota and Joey Weimer for Brady Singer, and you know, I think most of us, I don't want to speak for everybody, I think most of us would think that that's a pretty decent trade. So if that's the case, then we'll take it. Nick, your initial reactions, we haven't heard from you yet. Welcome in. I know you've been busy, so appreciate you getting this together. Chat, make sure you give the praise to Nick within 5-10 minutes of this news breaking. He's got this stream set up. He's got graphics made. He's got everything ready to go. So, Nick, we appreciate you. What's your initial reaction?
No, all praise to the wife for taking care of the 3 kids so I come down here. This is the easy stuff. Gavin Lux is a guy I've loved for a long time. I mean, this guy was the number 2 prospect in baseball in 2020. So I think ceiling-wise, he's got a significantly higher ceiling than a player like Jonathan India. Now, he's been hurt a lot. He's missed a lot of time throughout his career. So, you know, last year he did play 139 games, which was his career high. So, he hopefully has turned a corner in terms of that. But the upside, I mean, the power in a ballpark like Great American Ballpark, you think it's has a chance to really play well. I personally love that the Reds gave away prospects that I haven't fallen in love with yet. That's kind of cool. Like, I've never watched Mike Sirota play for the Chattanooga Lookouts. I don't have any really affinity towards the young man. I'm sure he'll be great, especially if the Dodgers want him. I'm sure he's going to be a star. But yeah, I mean, this feels like a pretty fair trade overall, you know, on the surface value. You have Lux, most importantly, through 2025 and 2026. You got 2 years. So really he's in the same spot as Jonathan India, but the upside is definitely there with Lux, and there is some versatility where you didn't really have that with Jonathan India, or at least we didn't know if you had that. They didn't actually try it out like they had planned going into 2024. You know, he can play left field. Can he play left field great? No, but Spencer Steer can't play left field great. He can play second base, I think, at a pretty serviceable level. and he can play shortstop. The question is, will the Reds try Lux or McLean at third base? That's the biggest question right now. Is there something, or is there another moving piece that we don't know about?
All of those are great points, and we'll talk about many of them throughout the show. This is probably going to be one of those shows where we stay live for a little while as details kind of continue to get ironed out. Want to acknowledge a couple super chats that we've gotten already. First and foremost, want to say that we appreciate everybody in the chat. 488 watching already. For those that sent the super chat, thank you so much. Drew Garrison, good friend of the show. The Bengals are dead, but big Reds guy season is back on. I'd die for Nick Kirby. Drew, we appreciate you being in the chat and hanging out with us. All in Christ, $5 super chat. World Series, baby. Appreciate both of you, and we'll do our best if any other super chats come through to make sure that we acknowledge them quickly and answer your questions. We appreciate everybody. We'll do our best to check in with the chat, but we've got a couple things we want to get to before we start getting into too many of the questions. So Trace brought it up, and Nick did as well, but Mike Sirota, obviously not a guy that many in the chat are overly familiar with. The price for Gavin Lux. Just for quick background, Mike Sirota was drafted this past summer by the Reds. He was their third-round draft pick, 87th overall out of Northeastern. He's a 21-year-old, and again, don't have a lot of information about him on the pro level. He was assigned to the ACL Reds last year, but not a whole lot of insight at this point. So price tag seems, for a guy that you're going to have control over for 2 years, doesn't seem to be overly pricey in my eyes. But again, this is a guy who, in Mike Sirota, who you don't really know what you have yet because he hasn't had a chance to prove himself. So Trace, in terms of price tag, any concerns about what the Reds have given up?
No, I think if anything, it shows that this is the luxury you have when you're the Dodgers in a way. They can essentially get rid of their second baseman to get a guy that they like. I mean, let's face the fact that they like Sirota. Like, they drafted him when he was in high school, 21st round. He decided, no, I'm not going to go. I'm going to go to college. And then obviously they probably had him on the draft board. The Reds took him earlier than the Dodgers, thought that they were going to take them. And then they were probably pissed, if we're being completely frank, about the fact that the Reds took him. And then all of a sudden they're kind of getting around to it, and they're like, what are we going to do with Lux? What about, basically Kim's on the market. Do we want Kim? Because we can just go get Kim. If we have to overpay for Kim, we'll just overpay for him. Not a big deal. It's just money. So they'll overpay for Kim. They'll have Kim as their second baseman. And what are they going to do in return? They just decided that they want to go and get their guy. I don't mean to butcher his name. Is it Sirota? I don't know. But yeah, I'm sure we'll find out.
Doesn't matter anymore.
And yeah, I'm sure we'll find out in 2 to 3 years what it is. I'm sure it'll be a stud. And I'll also say this, there's no guarantee that if Sirota would have played in the Reds organization, he would have had the same career that he's going to have with the Dodgers. I know that's a cop-out excuse if he ends up being a 10-year all-star or something. But that's kind of still my point, is that there's no guarantee. I think for the Reds' perspective, they didn't overpay. I mean, there's no way you could suggest that they overpaid here. I just think that they kind of got a little bit of a fortunate break, that the rich kid wanted a certain toy at Christmas and no one else had that toy, but they found somebody on Facebook that had the toy and they're willing to pay whatever it was to get him. And that's where we're at right now with Sirota. They liked him. That's my opinion, of course. They were going to overpay for him, and I think they overpaid for him. Now, what does it mean for the Reds? I don't want to be pessimistic about it. I'm just saying that I don't think it's a huge addition for the Reds until they go out and find some more pieces. And I know that there's been arguments and debates about all this, but I still need a bat in the outfield. And I know that maybe will come, and I know that's not what this show's about, but I'll ultimately just say we got Jonathan India back, and we also got Singer. So it's not been a terrible offseason, but I need something a little bit more than this to get me excited, if I'm being honest.
Sure. I think all of that is valid. And just to touch on it, I know we've kind of hinted at it. Jim Bowden now reporting that the Reds are not going to move Gavin Lux to the Yankees or anywhere else for that matter. They plan at looking at Lux at second base, third base, outfield, and DH. They also believe that Matt McLean, of course, can move around and give them some freedom there. We did get another super chat from Doug McMenamin, $2 super chat. Can he catch a fly ball? We need a right-handed outfielder. Nick, you alluded to his ability to play the outfield a little bit. What's your expectation, I guess, at this point, knowing what we know, which is very little, about how Gavin Lux fits in to this Reds team positionally?
Well, it's really, he hasn't played in the outfield since 2022. I mean, this guy missed the entire 2023 season. Last year, they only played him at second base. I assume that was probably partially because the Dodgers that fit what they needed right now, and also probably they didn't want to move a guy around just coming back, let him get comfortable and all of that. So it's so like he only played 45 career games in the outfield. So, you go look at his outs above average. I mean, it's fine. I mean, there's nothing like glaring there, but you can't really put a whole lot of stock one way or the other because he hasn't played a lot. So it's just really more about where he fits. Now, if, you get to spring training, Matt McLean's healthy, everything looks good, he's at second base. Noelvi Marte pulls his head out of his ass and plays the third base that we think, you got your outfielder. Gavin Lux could probably be your left fielder. And to be honest, I mean, people were wanting Michael Conforto. Gavin Lux to me has a much higher ceiling than a guy like Michael Conforto. The prospect wise, I mean, this guy was really, really good after he got going. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'll pull them up here in a second as to what his second half numbers were. But I know he absolutely destroyed in the second half. Let's see. Where are we at here?
Yeah, Gavin Lux in the second half /304, 390, 508. He had a 152 WRC plus, 2.0 FWAR, and a 10% barrel rate. Appreciate our guy Bryce Spalding for the stats there. As always, Bryce Spalding is on top of it.
But that's not just any second half. It's not like, okay, well, you acquired this guy that's played for 5 years and he had a really great second half last year. I mean, this is his first year coming back off of missing an entire year. So it's pretty easy to look at that and go, the first half was him, getting back acclimated. The second half may not be what he is. I don't think you should expect he's going to hit 304 with a 900 OPS, but I think that the overall numbers probably should be better than what they look at just last year on the surface.
I think should be able. Yeah, so second half of the season in his career, he slashes 273, 350, 780 OPS. So, yeah, it's traditionally a better second half hitter than first half. Gavin Lux in his career, 296 batting average at Great American Ballpark. Has certainly shown some power there. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
There's some folks in the chat right now that are Dodgers fans that are wanting to know who Mike Sirota is. We don't know. All right. If you're coming here to find that out, we have no clue. He had just gotten drafted, obviously, by the Reds. Nick.
Northeastern, right?
Yeah, Northeastern. Nick is traditionally a guy that loves prospects. He's not got a chance to watch Mike play yet, which is a good thing. That way we don't have to hear about how this was a terrible decision. That is a little bit of a joke.
There was a lot of people that really liked Mike Sirota when the Reds drafted him. Thought he was a college bat that could rise through the systems quickly. So if you're a Dodgers fan, my best interpretation is this is an outfielder that could potentially, get to the big leagues pretty quickly. This isn't drafting some, 18-year-old project that's going to take a while. If he develops, you could see him in the big leagues really probably by next year.
Yeah. And the other thing too is the Dodgers aren't really giving up a whole lot on their end either. So this is kind of a low risk trade probably on both ends. If we're being completely honest, there's not going to be a whole lot of controversy around Cincinnati because we sent Sirota to the Dodgers. And my guess, and I hope I'm wrong. My guess is the Dodgers will, they'll probably have 90 wins by the end of June, and they'll probably be like, oh yeah, Gavin Lux, he's playing for the Reds. I forgot about that. I could be wrong, and I hope I am. I hope he's like an all-star and they're pissed off because Kim's hurt or something. No disrespect to Kim.
Hopefully Jordan Alvarez. I mean, the Dodgers did trade Jordan Alvarez away. I think that might be a little bit of wishful thinking, just a little bit. But yeah, no, if you're if you're on the Dodgers perspective, I mean, Gavin Lux is expendable, especially if you can go out and you can afford a better all-around player that can, like Kim. I love Kim. I would love for the Reds to go get Kim, but they're not going to be able to afford him. So, I mean, Kim would be a better defensive player, better well-rounded player. So from the Dodgers' perspective, great. If you have the money, just keep spending it. Acquire teams' prospects when they're, more desperate like the Reds. But I don't really think from the Reds' perspective, this was one of the desperate trades. A desperate trade would have been moving Cam Collier for Luis Robert, in my opinion. That's a desperate trade that a team makes. This isn't a desperate trade. This is, overall, I think, taking from a position of strength. The pick and Sirota, in my opinion, are about even in terms of their overall value. I think the trade values probably was close to saying that as well.
Right.
But that pick's pretty valuable. Let's not sugarcoat that part of it. That's a pretty high draft pick that the Reds get because they're in a small market, and the Dodgers are basically buying that pick.
Yeah. Yeah. For those that don't know, a compensation pick is and you guys could probably explain it a lot better than me, but it's a pick that's allocated based off qualifiers for demographics that would help competitive balance. And it's basically it's not a first round pick, but it's
right after.
It's basically like a second round. That's not a second round pick. I don't know how to explain it, but it's a high level pick that might end up, becoming something. So for those that are thinking that, like you said, Mike Sirota is not, a big deal, maybe the draft pick will become a big deal. But again, from the Reds' perspective, which is kind of where we should probably try to keep this, is it gives the Reds an opportunity now, if nothing else, to build some depth at the major league level. You look at the infield, and it's just filled with a bunch of guys that have question marks on durability a little bit. So you have Noelve, who clearly had his suspension. At this point, I don't think anybody with the right mind is probably expecting a whole lot of production out of him. And then you have Matt McLain, who's seemingly been hurt, for the last year and a half. And you're stuck with Espinal, and now you have Gavin Lux to kind of help fill the void, if you want to call it that. Zero chance he plays the outfield. Do we all agree on that?
Gavin Lux?
Yes.
No, I think there's a possibility he plays the outfield. If Marte comes to camp and looks good, I think that he probably is playing left field. And Matt McLain's healthy. I mean, if McLain's healthy, Marte looks the part in spring training. Looks like he's the guy we fell in love with in 2023, or even a version of that. Right. I absolutely think Gavin Lux is probably playing left field.
They're going to have to make a decision on what they're going to do a little bit. I don't want to say before spring training, but as spring training progresses, because you'd like to get, I would assume, some reps. How many reps, I don't know if it matters, but you're going to at least want to give some reps to McLain at third base if that's where you're ultimately going to end up putting him.
Yeah, Lux came up as a shortstop.
I don't think his numbers at shortstop were nearly as good.
He was known for no, not at all. That's why he plays second base.
Yeah.
He was known for having a good arm, but then had a lot of throwing errors, overthrowing the first baseman, is what I'm reading. So yeah. I think that the throw from third base is probably a little easier, but
right.
I don't know. Can he play third base? It's really impossible for us to speculate because there's absolutely no data whatsoever. Maybe the Reds think he can. If he could, that's a great fit for the Reds. If not, it does make it interesting to see, would they move McLain to third base? I know people are going to go to Ellie to third base. I don't love that idea.
No.
But, that would it would fit. Because Ellie has played third base. McLain has played shortstop. Lux has played second base.
No way.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I like no part of it. I'm just suggesting that is an option.
It's not an option. No, it's not.
Not a good one.
Not an option. It's not an option. Sometimes, even though you can do it, it's still not an option. Go ahead.
Well, I think ultimately what we're seeing is this Reds team is adding insurance policies, and ultimately the Reds have been burned for the last couple of years by high impact injuries, right? We saw it with CES, we saw it with Matt McLain, we've seen it with others. It seems like every year this team is bitten by injuries and don't have a really good, solid backup plan for how to handle those. And so now you're adding more guys who seemingly are a little bit more versatile in terms of what they can do. Now, is Gavin Lux a great outfielder? No, but does that mean he can't fill in? Would you rather have Gavin Lux in the outfield or Santiago Espinal in the outfield, Trace?
Well, to be fair,
because last year we saw
I've not
Santiago Espinal in the outfield.
Yeah, and I think that got his manager fired, if I had to guess. But I guess where I'm at with this whole thing, and again, I'm not trying to be the pessimistic, toxic trace that I guess I live up to, is that if we're in a position where we're always trying to navigate waters of, well, he's not really done that, but maybe he can do it for us because that's just kind of the way he's going to fit in here. I don't know. That seems like a terrible way to operate. And it seems like we've gotten too many guys that are like that. And I'm not trying to say that that's Spencer Steer, but it is. I don't want Gavin Lux be in a position where he's got to do the same thing. And then on top of that, we still don't have a right fielder. We have like 4 guys that we can point to that says, well, if he hits left-handed pitching and this guy hits right-handed pitching perfectly, and it's like there's too many variables at stake that have to go right for this team to be competitive. And I think if nothing else, Gavin Lux is going to play second base. They're going to put Matt McLean at third base, and they're going to at some point hope that Noelve gets good enough to then start to be able to shuffle it around. But I don't think, I'll tell you what this says. Has nothing to do with McLean, has nothing to do with Gavin Lux. I think it has more to do with Noelve Marte, who went down to the Dominican League and didn't look very good either. And they're at one time they were all in on Noelve, right? And then now it seemingly comes to a conclusion that they obviously can't trust him. And I think that's valid. And Espinal is a guy, as I've said before, I love him as a utility piece. I don't know if I love Espinal being my everyday whatever, third and or second baseman.
So to address a couple things we're seeing in the chat real quick, I just want to take a second and answer some of the questions we're seeing. Gavin Lux under team control for the next 2 years, estimated to earn somewhere in the 2.5 to 3 million range next year, and then he'll have ARB 3 in 2026 before being an unrestricted free agent in his year 29 season in 2027. He does have 2 MILB options remaining from what I'm seeing, so that other flexibility that technically gives the Reds, whether they, would need to use it or not, but at least it's there. And then finally, Sean Krutka with a $5 super chat. Appreciate you, Sean. If Lux is a piece, I like the move. If this is their quote outfield upgrade, then it's an abject failure. Still need a right-handed bat. And Kirby, I'll look to you, but Gavin Lux career numbers versus left-handed pitchers, not great. OPS of 552, batting average at 202, 178 games and only 3 home runs. Not exactly a strong suit going up against left-handed batters, obviously, for the left-handed Gavin Lux. So not somebody that you would expect to be able to play every day, I would guess. What's your thoughts there in terms of, obviously, the Reds still continue to need a right-handed bat. Seems to be a universal accepted need right now, but what are your thoughts on all of that in terms of his bat and just his options and everything else?
Well, I mean, you could platoon him with Santiago Espinal if he's playing third base or second base, and that's a pretty solid overall player, I think. I don't mind platoon players. I have no problem with that. I know 2024 was the worst case scenario with platoon players, and I think people are going to be really down on it. But I see a lot of like Gavin Lux as a bench piece. Like he was starting in the World Series for the World Champions last year. Like this is a guy that started every day in the World Series for the team that won the World Series. So this is a legitimate player. I don't think he's a superstar, but again, like how much he's got some real potential here. I mean, this was the number 2 overall prospect in baseball a couple years ago. He's a little bit of a risky just because he hasn't played. I mean, he missed, the entire year, but I mean, this guy had a 900 OPS in the second half. I mean, he was a really, really good player down the stretch for the Dodgers. So I think that, I don't know, if you went and you got Randall Grichuk right now and kind of added another big right-handed bat that you could kind of mix and match, it's not the perfect team, but I think the offense is a lot better than I think a lot of people think. And Terry Francona's managed a lot of platoons. The Cleveland Guardians had a lot of platoons. They won a World Series with the platoon. I remember Brandon Geyer was a right-handed bat, just absolutely crushed left-handed bats, and not they win the World Series. Went to the World Series. I'm sorry. Let me correct myself. But yeah, I mean, like I think like Randall Grichuk would be a great partner to go along with Gavin Lux. They wouldn't play the same positions, but you kind of would mix and match that way.
Trace, I think you had something to say. No?
I was just going to laugh because I was going to make a fun little dig at Nick because I like him, and I would only do it because I like him. But him going through that whole exercise there to let us know that Gavin Lux has been the number 2 prospect, overall prospect a couple years ago, is like sitting at the bar with a bunch of 50-year-olds and being like, you should have seen that girl. I know she doesn't look good now, but boy, oh boy, did she look good about when she was in her 30s. And so it's like, well, Nick, I don't have to tell you this, but I'm not looking at her in her 30s. I'm looking at her in her 50s. But that's here nor there.
He's 26.
Listen, Gavin Lux is a good player, okay? He's a good player. He's a major league player. For what they traded to get him, it was a good trade. But let's not also, again, to be clear, I think it's very fair for the chat and for any fan to still desire to have an outfield bat. And I know that's easier said than done. And I would also openly admit that the Reds might be in a position of wait and hold on that specific thing, because Nick is also not wrong in saying that, you know, and again, I'm going to go through some guys that everyone's going to laugh at and they're going to be pissed off that we're even bringing their names up. But like maybe Jake Fraley bounces back, right? And has a really good year. Maybe, again, I know Stuart Fairchild's a name that no one likes, but a pretty serviceable option when there's left-handed pitching. TJ Friedel's probably the biggest X factor that there is in the outfield. If he plays every day and he plays the way that he did in the year in which, you know, they were the young kids coming up, then you have a real chance to make some noise. And Will Benson, although again, am I putting my faith in him? No. But point saying, having all of those guys out there, there's a chance that you can platoon some guys and get some real production. And then at the trade deadline, if it's still a relatively whole or still a relative need, then maybe they move off of one of these big guys that we don't want them to move off of. I don't know. But something tells me that Nick Krall has decided that he's not going to move off of these prospects until he knows he has a foundational piece that is a playoff-worthy team. And I don't think that anyone can say that that's true right now with the Reds. They could go out and win 90 games. They could go out and win 70 games. And me, Nick, and Craig could come up for a reason as to why they do both. Yeah. That's not a very good place to be as someone that's trying to manage an organization. The Dodgers, there's a lot of things that could go wrong with the Dodgers, and I'm just using them as an example. They're not going to lose. They're not going to win 70 games. We know this. The Reds are not that fortunate. So we'll see ultimately what they decide to do from the outfield. But I don't think Gavin Lux is the outfield. I don't think he's the outfield answer that the Reds are looking for. I just don't believe that. I believe that they think that this is a little more depth in the infield, and they've seen what happened with Nuelve over the winter, and they're thinking to themselves, they got to shore that up, and maybe they'll be able to go find an answer in the outfield. I cannot put my brain through the idea that the Reds are thinking they've solved the outfield by signing a second base or trading to get a second baseman. Could be wrong.
Well, and Nick, I know it's one of your favorite stats, but ultimately we talk a lot about outs above average, and Gavin Lux doesn't seem defensively to be adding a whole lot to this team. -2 outs above average last year, career -2 outs above average. I think that ultimately for a team that's trying to prioritize defense, that has to be a question of, you know, for a guy who obviously can play multiple positions, but maybe none of them great, like how much value does that bring, right? So I don't think there's anything wrong with adding an average fielder that can play multiple positions. I'm not trying to downplay that, but to think that he can maybe be an everyday or even every other day platoon player with Santiago Espinal, I guess that is the question, is can they improve his defense, which was a big knock against Jonathan India and probably one of the main reasons he's not in Cincinnati anymore.
In fairness, though, to Gavin Lux, with his career -1 outs above average, I mean, that's still quite a big leap from Spencer Steer -22 career outs above average. Jonathan India -23 career outs above average. So there's a pretty big difference of being an average fielder, or maybe tiny, slightly below it, and a really poor defender, which both of those guys were. So is he a great defender? No, but if you put average defenders, if the Reds had average defenders in every spot around Ellie De La Cruz and Matt McLain, you're going to have a pretty good overall defense. The problem was they had a lot of really, really bad defenders around those guys. So I don't really know, though, how much you can really say definitively Gavin Lux is actually that okay defender or a bad defender just because you don't have enough data on him. He hasn't played that many games, and he has moved around. But on the surface, he definitely looks like quite a big upgrade if you stuck him in, wherever over some of the other options the Reds have thrown out there in recent years.
Sorry, I love that comment from Sean Kruka. Nick needs to get a job representing these players at arbitration. I'm going to ask you each to put on your Tito Francona hat for a second. Obviously, we've thrown around a lot of different scenarios and possibilities. I want to fast forward to March in opening day. Everybody's healthy. You've got your full roster at this point. What does your infield look like on opening day 2025 if you had it your way?
Gavin Lux is either. I'd have to see them both because I like Matt McLain at second base so much based off what I've seen before. Right, I don't want to take Matt McLain and put him at third base just because he's a little bit better than Gavin Lux at third base, and then lose out on basically a perennial Gold Glover at second base because of that. So either or, Matt McLain or Gavin Lux is going to play third base or second base. Mix the two however you wish, but one of those guys are going to have to basically play either one. Ellie's a shortstop, and he's going to stay the shortstop, and he should stay the shortstop until he proves that he's not a world-class defender at shortstop. CES is going to play first base. Candelario, if I had to guess, just based off the fact that he got paid, it's going to DH. Stevenson's catching. TJ Friedl is going to play center field. Depending on the matchup, you're going to have, my guess, is going to be some combination of Spencer Steer or Jake Fraley in the corner spots. That's probably my best guess. I don't know. Am I missing someone at the corner outfield spots right now?
Not really. I mean, I think Will Benson could earn his way onto that, but I don't think right now on paper he's in that.
Doesn't it seem crazy though that we're going into 2025? It just seems like we're not done yet. That's all. And I'm not trying to be like the glass is half full here. It would seem crazy to me that we would go into spring training with like Will Benson not being like one of those outside chance guys. Like it kind of feels like that's where when 2024 ended, it felt like Will Benson was going to be a guy that was going to have to play absolutely incredible in spring training to earn a Bubba Thompson type spot on the roster where he's maybe the last guy on and he's going to get some spot starts. Bubba Thompson didn't get any spot starts, and we all found out why, because he went to Chattanooga and hit about $110 for the rest of the season, but that's beside the point. He was on a major league roster for like 2 months last year, just so we all know. Anyways, that's my best guess for Tito Francona.
I would agree. I think Lux is at third base if everyone's healthy, but that's not going to happen. We know that's not going to happen. I think the Reds' plan right now would probably be, let's try Lux at third base. If he looks okay there, we would put him there. We'd put McLain at second base. And then if McLain gets hurt, which is a possibility, Lux moves back to second, and then you have either Marte or Espinal for third base. If somehow Marte gets to camp and there's this resurgent, Marte takes third base, and then you move Lux to the left field. There's really like 3 different kind of options, probably, if he can play third base. Again, I have no reason to believe one way or the other if he can or not, because there's just no data. But it definitely feels like a move that the Reds made when they believe that he could play third base. So I think that, and I think it's really a mix and match in the outfield. Do the Reds have no good outfielders? Or do the Reds have like 3 or 4? I mean, there's a lot of options out there. Again, you have Steer, you have Fraley, you have Friedl, you have Benson. You also have guys like Blake Dunn, who was really thought of highly going into last year, never got it going. You have Jacob Hurtubise, you have Benson, you have Fairchild, you have Hines. I mean, that's a lot of options. You only need 3 of them, really, maybe 4, because some of them are going to be able to tune. You only need a couple of them to play well to fill out your outfield. So I don't know. And Tyler Callahan's another option as well. He's been playing left field, was in the Arizona Fall League. The Reds just added him to the 40-man roster. There's a lot of options. It's just really going to be, who breaks out. If the Reds rolled with this right now and you got to July and the Reds outfield's a complete dumpster fire, I don't think it would shock me. But if they have 3 or 4 guys that step up and look good, it wouldn't shock me either. I remember going into 2023 and the thought was the Reds outfield's a dumpster fire, and then the Reds outfield ended up being one of the strengths of the team that year. So I don't know, there's a lot of just wild cards in the outfield.
Let's take a quick breather and let's acknowledge 988. Appreciate 988 for their support of Chatterbox Reds all season long. Nick, go ahead when you're ready.
Yeah, as always, we want to remind you can call or text 988 anytime, day or night. The 988 Suicide Crisis Lifeline is a place for support for anything related to mental health, whether it's an immediate crisis, simply wanting to find out how to connect with care, or anything in between. It's a 100% confidential, secure, and anonymous way to reach out for help when you don't know where else to turn. To connect, call or text 988 or visit mantherapy.org to get help. It's okay not to be okay.
Hard to put numbers on this stuff, guys, but obviously you had mentioned earlier, Nick, the value on the comp pick. The trade values the comp picks valued at $4.1 million, Sirota $1.9 million. So looks like you had that ready to go. But as far as like the overall deal, 13.6 basically surplus in trade value for the Reds. So pretty impressive. It just clearly illustrates that the Dodgers love Sirota. They value him significantly higher than what everyone else values him at, and I guess we'll find out if they're right. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of a wild thing that they like him that much.
They've also drafted really well, so when they get an extra bonus draft that high, they love that as well. Right. So that is a really, really big. It's a bigger piece probably than Sirota, but to your point, I mean, they did draft him, so there certainly is something there. But sure. I mean, the Dodgers, they just want to get their hands on as many prospects and as many picks as they can, because they know if they just keep stockpiling that, they can outspend everyone on top of it, and it makes them the juggernaut that they are.
Yeah. Actually, let's start with Michael Rolfe, good friend of the show, 1999 super chat. Oh, snap. Trace is alive. And so are the front offices of the Reds and the Bengals. It's been a busy day for me. Been a busy day. But look, I want to revisit one of the conversations that we were just having before the 988 chat. And Trace, I want your opinion too, but Nick, I want to start with you. I know that platooning is not necessarily a bad thing, but ultimately when you're eating up 6, 8, 10 spots on guys who are platoon players on a roster of 26, eventually there becomes a time when you don't have room for anybody else. And what we're talking about right now with platooning in the outfield, platooning at second, platooning at third, I mean, ultimately what you're doing is you're talking about multiple guys on the roster who can't play every day and are taking up spots. And ultimately, I'm not saying that Gavin Lux is going to end up being a platoon guy or not. I'm not going to say that the Reds aren't going to go make another move that cuts down on some of those platoons. But is there a concern at some point that the Reds, in this kind of approach that Nick Krall has shown for years now, is something that may work in small quantities, but you can't do it at every position, right?
I think right now they only have 3 positions. If you'd have the corner outfields and then third base would be your platoons,
or second base. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's
if we're saying if we were saying Matt McLain's playing second base, we're saying Gavin Lux is playing third base. Then it'd be third base, and it would be the 2 corner outfield spots. And one of those corner outfield spots, Candelaria is not DH. Candelaria is not a platoon player. So really, that's 3 spots. Okay. I think there was a lot of playoff teams that had 3 platoons. I just think that right now, a lot of fans they got burned on it in 2024, and they're going to look negatively upon it. But when it works well, I mean, it worked very well for the Reds in 2023. I don't remember a whole lot of complaints about. Actually, I remember complaints about Will Benson they didn't want him to platoon. That was about the only complaints I heard. But I mean, it worked great in 2023 with Fraley and Benson, and then last year it just didn't work out. So again, I think it's 3 spots. I think you can absolutely afford 3 spots. I don't think 3 is probably the maximum because you have to carry a backup catcher, which the Reds have a quality backup catcher, and Jose Trevino. So 3 is really about the max you can do, unless one of them is a catcher that you're platooning.
I'm trying to find it real quick. I want to try to
the other thing on platooning as well that I think the Reds got burned a little bit on is that the guys that took the vast majority of the at-bats based off the handedness of the pitcher were guys that were inconsistent players in general. I mean, Will Benson's a guy that we obviously leaned on to try to provide some semblance of execution, and he just didn't. And that's going to basically put you in a spot where, I don't know, you're going to look negatively upon that when you see a guy like Will Benson get as many at-bats as he did. But I'm with Nick as well. I'm not going to throw in the towel on some concept that clearly works. It's just a matter of, can we get enough guys that are actual major league players that are platooning? Because sometimes we've platooned with guys, and I think we can agree on this, that quite frankly are quadruple A players.
I think that's one of the challenges for me, and I'll admit it. Like I'm not going to sit here and act like I have a strong opinion one way or another, but it would be really nice to have somebody on this roster that you can just rely on day in and day out. And I think there's a lot of question marks and a lot of hopes for guys that you could rely on day in and day out. And I see Kirby's face. I don't know if that's directed at me or something else, but for me, I a lot of platooning, a lot of wishing and hoping that guys are healthy and wishing and hoping that they have rebound seasons. Like, where do we turn to for a little comfort, Kirby? Like wrap me in a blanket and tell me that it's okay. Tyler Stevenson's going to continue to do what he did last year. Maybe that's the answer, but like, I don't know. McLean was injured. Friedel was injured. Platooning in the outfield. Ellie, obviously, we hope continues his improvement, but I don't know.
The comfort, you have a really, really, really good pitching staff. I mean, that's the comfort. And you have a lineup that is just chocked full of question marks. I look at the Reds' options right now for a lineup, and it could be above average or it could be the same as last year. It can really swing one way or the other. I think there's a lot of guys that people have given up on very quickly that a year ago they were all very high on. So the comfort is just you have 6 big league starting pitchers, six above average big league starting pitchers. And that's where the comfort is. That's where this team can win a lot of games. I mean, look at the Brewers. They've won the division on pitching mostly. They have not had lineups. So I mean that's really where this team's strength is. But yeah, I would still love for them to go out and grab another outfielder. I don't think it has to go be Santander. I'm pretty confident it's not going to be Santander. But if they went out and grabbed Randall Grichuk, I think you could really, carve out a pretty nice lineup at that point, or at least the potential for a pretty nice lineup.
Yeah, we've been live for, I don't know, what time do we go live, Nick? You probably know.
48 minutes.
6:10. We've been live for 45 minutes. Appreciate everybody. 600 people hanging out, 550 people hanging out watching this. For those of you that just joined or didn't hear the full news, the Reds earlier this evening acquiring Gavin Lux, second baseman from the Los Angeles Dodgers. Obviously, Dodgers expected to sign Hyeseong Kim, the Korean player, to play the second base every day. And so that opened up the ability for the Dodgers to make this move. The Reds in return send Mike Sirota along with a competitive balance pick, number 37 overall, to the Dodgers. I know we talked about it a little bit already, and I don't want to spend a lot of time, but for those of that are still trickling in and joining, Nick and Trace, just why don't you recap kind of your feelings now that we've been live for 45 minutes or so and kind of had a chance to digest a little bit more and kind of just give where your headspace is right now.
To put a bow on it, so I mean, essentially, I just looked at the fan graphs, and I'm looking at throughout the Reds roster right now. You're looking at expected wins above replacement. Third base is the clear hole. And I think if nothing else, after I've kind of digested this a little bit, I would be hard pressed to think that that's not where they're going to put Matt McLain. And they're going to slide Gavin Lux in at second base, keep him familiar with the position that he's had some success at. And then they're going to maybe try to find some semblance of an answer in the outfield. But the Reds, as far as what they got for what they sent away, which is what we would traditionally do on a show like this, who won the trade? The Reds couldn't turn this down, right? Like, you get a call from the Dodgers and they're like, hey, this is how crazy this trade is. This couldn't even have possibly been on Kral's radar. He could have just been having a nice little family gathering, playing some, tic-tac-toe with the kids or something. And somebody calls up and says, hey, we're going to offer you Gavin Lux. And he's like, well, we're not really that interested. And they said, all right, well, we'll just give you, we just want Mike Sirota and a comp pick for next year. And I guess at that point, Nick Krall would have to say yes. Like, you don't have an option. Somebody walked up to your door, Craig, right now and said, I got a Mercedes-Benz out in the street, $50 and it's yours. You have to say yes, because it might not move. It might be like a shell of a Mercedes, but it's worth at least $50. And I think that's where the Reds find themselves in this trade. Will it ultimately work out for both sides? We'll see. But from a Reds perspective, as far as Matt McLain, I see the chat. Matt McLain's going to go to the outfield. That's what this means. And I was like, with all due respect, I love everybody. I love everybody in the chat. I appreciate you supporting us. Matt McLain, if he goes in the outfield, I'm boycotting. He's one of the best infielders that we have, defensively, of course, because it seems like that's something that this organization just decides they don't care about. We should care about it. It matters. Matt McLain's a good defender. He's going to stay in the infield. Gavin Lux is going to stay in the infield. And we'll see if we get our outfield bat. I'm not going to hold my breath, but I'm happy with it. That's my answer.
I have to laugh. Chris R said, sorry, are we calling Gavin Lux a Mercedes-Benz?
On the Reds? I mean, if you're looking at the Reds last year, yeah. I mean, the Reds had 3 players that had a weighted runs created plus of 100 or better, and one of them's in Kansas City right now. So, I mean, Gavin Lux, that 100 weighted runs created plus we're expecting better than that, because he got up to an incredibly slow start, like we talked about, and he was much better than that in the second half. So, I mean, right now he's penciled in as one of your better hitters. And again, he's a guy that can swing quite a wide range. I think a guy like CES is a guy that can swing quite a wide range. Those are probably, and maybe Benson is maybe the other one, in Marte. I mean, those are the ones that you could really have, swing a lot. I think we probably know what Friedel and Fraley are. I mean, is Friedel a 95 or a 105? It's somewhere in that. But I think Lux has the potential to be, I don't know, one of the Reds' top 3 hitters for sure next year. I don't think that's crazy at all to think.
Yeah, and I mean, real quick, I mean, Bryce Spalding again. Just a reminder for people. I mean, in 2022, Gavin Lux, a 113 WRC plus, 2.7 FWAR, then went and tore up his knee in 2023. The Dodgers in 2024 kind of tried him in a couple different positions during spring training. He struggled out of the gate early after kind of moving around during spring training. And then, as we talked about earlier, kind of found his footing in the second half last year. So this is, I mean, a quality player. I think if you would have told Reds fans after 2022 that the Reds went out and got Gavin Lux, I think most of them would be pretty ecstatic. And we're trying to judge a guy right now off of a year where he was battling back from a completely restructured knee, and really seemed to find his footing halfway through the year. So, if you can get second half Gavin Lux in the first half and beyond this coming year, and all you paid was Mike Sirota, I think most people are going to look back on this trade, if that happens, pretty favorably. So, like all trades, I mean, I kind of implore people to pump the brakes a little bit before we start to judge it too much, because ultimately we won't really know how things work out for another 5+ years, and Mike Sirota may or may not ever make the majors. And so before we start to say, oh, it was a major overpay, or, oh, we got the steal of the day, or whatever it may have been. Who knows? What I feel like, at least, and I think that Trace and Nick will agree with me, is that the Reds today are better than they were yesterday. And ultimately, I think that's the most important thing that we can be looking for in terms of a team who's very young and has, I feel like, a lot of talent down in their farm system. They didn't have a ton of MLB ready talent, but they do have some talent that are probably 3 or 4 years away. And so this, in my eyes at least, lines them up so then in 2027, 2028, those young guys who are ready to make their impact in the majors have space to do that. Nick, we talk about guys like Cam Collier a lot, Sal Stewart a lot. There are many others in single A or even at double A that we expect to make an impact in the next couple of years. So for me, this again just kind of lines that up where, okay, you have Gavin Lux for the next 2 years, and it gives you an opportunity that you've got his replacement ready to go either next year or the year after. And I think that that's probably likely. I mean, the Reds aren't going to try and re-sign Gavin Lux, I wouldn't expect, but who knows? Nick, what's your thoughts on kind of just planning for the future as part of this move?
I don't know about the future. I think Gavin Lux is just a piece to help you for the next 2 years. I think Lux also, I kind of look at his profile, and he's got very Jake Fraley moving out of Seattle into Great American Ballpark vibes, where Fraley obviously had 15 home runs in 2023. I think Lux can kind of has a chance to settle into that. I'm sure Gavin Lux is probably thrilled about this trade. He's going to get a chance to play at least every day against right-handed pitching. Probably has a chance to play even more than that. But looking at his StatCast page, he has 30 career home runs. Great American Ballpark, it expects him to be 35. That's the most of any ballpark. So he's Great American Ballpark is the best fit of any ballpark in baseball. There's no one else that has higher has 35. So I think he's got a chance to really have a few of those home runs that sneak out that right field fence that we see that are frustrating. He's the kind of guy that I think can kind of exploit that a little bit. But like I said, I think he's probably one of the Reds' 3 or 4 best hitters on paper right now. Going into the season, and I think you have to look at that as a good thing compared to where they were, a few hours ago.
Yeah, I think I just think about guys. Again, I mentioned some of them: Sal Stewart, Cam Collier, Edwin Arroyo, who many say is the best defensive player in the Reds organization. Even guys like Tyson Lewis, who are farther down the list, Sammy Stafura, who showed some flashes last year at single A. This team has infield depth in the minor leagues that just aren't necessarily expected to make an impact this year. Being able to push, at least in my eyes, Edwin Arroyo's arrival to the majors back a year or two with this move has to play into it, because otherwise, I don't know what their solution would be. And you would have been kind of in a position again where if an injury happens or God forbid somebody struggles and needs to go down to AAA or whatever, like, who's your next man up? And the Reds didn't really have anybody at AAA. So this adds depth and again, flexibility for them to be able to do what makes sense for them in 2025 and beyond. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. Nick, what else is on your list that you want to talk about?
We'll talk about Owen White. The Reds acquired him. It is a busy day for the Cincinnati
You're
Reds.
excited for Owen White, it seems like.
No, I think he's just another arm. I'm excited that they've addressed a little bit with him, and who's the guy they got, the Pirates, Ronzi Contreras. I was a little worried about the Reds, starting pitching depth beyond the top 6 after you lose Aguilar and Williamson. I think people just, the Reds have 6 starting pitchers, and you're going to have to use a lot more than that to get through a year. So I'm excited they added another guy that just is another option for that. I think he's nothing more than that. But anytime you get a guy that, was a top 100 prospect just 2 years ago for cash, that's a pretty good thing. That's the poor man's Dodgers move.
Nick is referencing a move from earlier today where the Reds acquired Owen White, right-handed pitcher from the Texas Rangers. He was a former second-round pick, number 25 prospect in the organization, and did it for cash. So White had only appeared in 5 career games, 5.64 ERA and 99 innings at AAA last season. I saw some people trying to compare him to Lucas Sims a little bit, but throws 5 different pitches, had some command concerns, which, Nick, we're well aware of, and how some other minor leaguers have had command concerns in the Reds organization. So interesting move nonetheless. I just saw a tweet from Bob Nightingale that the Reds are keeping Gavin Lux and, quote, plan to use him as a super utility player. So for those of you that are, we've talked about it a lot, but ultimately, from my perspective, again, it's just flexibility, right? I mean, everything that this Reds team is doing right now seems to be flexibility.
Yeah, until they find guys that are big league players at their position, I'd say that's the case. Yes, and I'm not downplaying that the Reds don't have some pretty good pieces that we should be excited about. But I think where you find yourself fighting, Craig, is you're ultimately fighting. You're not fighting against platoons. You're fighting against the guys that we're putting in those roles at the platoons. And I guess that's the decision that ultimately Reds fans have to decide on is, do you think that the Reds decided to make this move today to ultimately make their big splash? I don't. And maybe if you feel that way, I could understand why you have disdain towards this move. But what I would openly say is just step back from the rest of the situation that is with the Reds. Forget the outfield bat piece. Act as if this is just a sole trade, one move in a vacuum. What do you think on it? And I would hope that every single Reds fan would generally agree. This is a very good move. It's a very good move. Now, whether or not we're able to kind of piece it together and make it all make sense for us, that's a whole nother story. But in a vacuum, you can't argue that this isn't a great move for the Reds, period. So I don't know how you'd be upset about the move. Now, I can understand why you're upset that the Reds maybe have not done more for you this offseason to get you excited for the season. But I would also say I'm not putting a whole lot of stock in that either, because last year we were extremely excited for the season, and you've seen what it turned out to be. The year prior to that, we were supposed to lose the most games in Major League history, and it was one of the more entertaining, exciting seasons that we've had as Reds fans. So as I progress through this year, or towards this year, I'm not going to sit here and suggest that just because the Reds haven't gone out and got a huge outfield bat, that's the only thing stopping this team from winning a World Series. We ultimately are relying on a lot of pieces that are already here. The question is, and this is why we watch, this is why we're going to watch, is will those guys bounce back to form? Will they have the year that they had in 2023? Or will we have the inconsistencies that existed in 2024? We'll find out together, obviously. But as far as this show and this trade, if you're not excited about this as a Reds fan or happy about that this happened, then I think that you just need to take a step back, my friend. Some would say take a step back from that ledge, my friend, and understand that there's only so much one man or one organization can do in one offseason. They're not going to be able to fix 25 or 30 years of misery that we've found ourselves in, period.
Yeah, there's no question that Lux makes the Reds have a better offense. And the nice thing is he gives you options too. It's hard to predict where the Reds' biggest black hole is going to be. Like if this is the team and you rolled into opening day and you say, what's going to be a bigger hole? Is it going to be third base? Is it going to be second place because Matt McClain can't stay healthy? Or is it going to be the outfield? I don't really know. I mean, I could see it going different ways. You could see Marte figuring it out. You could see Benson figuring it out, or you could see them being exactly what they've been. So the nice thing about it is you're not signing a guy that's stamped to one position. Whereas some of the outfielders, that we were considering, you can't go sign Michael Conforto and go move him to third base. That's not an option. You at least have that option with Gavin Lux. So he does give the team a little bit more flexibility. It's going to be kind of fascinating to see how they move all these pieces together, because there's multiple ways they could do it.
You think Candelario got in shape this offseason and could play third base? Is that possible?
It's hard to believe that after they just acquired an infielder. I would maybe believe that 24 hours ago. I think he's going to DH. I think he's going to DH. I think the Reds are going to try to – I think that probably preserves him the best over the course of the year.
Yeah.
And I think that he probably DHs mostly.
For as good as Nick Martinez was, he's been just as bad. They cancel each other out.
Yeah, and it was just the fact that he can't play third base, or we don't think he can play third base. I mean, that was the whole selling point of him, was that he had that ability to play third base. And
he's like a car. He's like a car that can't drive.
Yeah. And Candelario, if he has a resurgent 2025, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, we saw him be really, really good for a couple months. And so, it's going to be exciting, but it's still not going to be a good contract, because you could go find that as a DH for that amount of money pretty easily, or less. Actually, quite a bit less, probably.
Right. Fair enough. Greg?
I mean, this is the thing, right? And we talked about it earlier, is that, and I've talked about it throughout the season and off season, is that, there's just too many question marks on this team. And for me, Gavin Lux, and it makes sense with Bob Nightingale's tweet, I don't know that the Reds are going to pencil him into any position at this point. Like, I think ultimately, if he can truly play second base, third base, DH, if you need him for a handful of games in the outfield, then that's a good thing to have on the team. I mean, you look at Espinal, he did that some last year. Spencer Steer has moved around and played so many different positions. I mean, positional flexibility is not necessarily a bad thing. And ultimately, if this team is, looking to improve defensively, like Nick was talking about earlier, having an average fielder who can play multiple positions on a team who was, quite frankly, not very good defensively in the past couple of years, I think that's a huge add. And to do it with only giving up a literal last year draft pick that is a lottery pick at best, which is the case with most draft picks in the MLB, whether you like it or not, Gavin Lux is a proven commodity. And I realized that he struggled at the beginning of last year. But at the end of the day, I mean, he's shown an ability to be a major league player. And having a sure thing major league player, even if it's just an average one, is a lot better than having 3 or 4 guys you hope will be that major league player.
It's fair. It's a fair point. I think that let's be honest, the pushback against the prospects versus the guys that are in the big leagues, Gavin Lux, if you looked at him as a prospect, as Nick already said, you'd have been extremely excited for this guy. And then he gets hurt, tears his ACL, out for a year, has a pretty bad start to the season last year. Then he gets red hot, by the way. Oh, mind you, and I'm not trying to be crappy towards Jonathan India in any way, but like, you take 1 month from Jonathan India last year, you take his best month away, he was terrible. So I'm not going to downgrade Gavin Lux just because he had one bad half and he tore his ACL the year before that. So Gavin Lux is, and this is where people probably get mad. Can we say that Gavin Lux is one of the best players on the Reds right now? Like, he just is. That's a pretty great thing to say for giving up what they gave up. The reason that some people are upset, I guess, if anything, is because they think that this was the move that the Reds made that was the big splash. And my argument back to them is that I don't think that it was. I don't think it was. I don't even think that they were planning on trying to get Lux. I think that the Dodgers seeked this trade out because they seen the comp pick and they also seen a guy that they liked. And they thought, you know what? We're probably going to overspend here a little bit, but what's it matter? We have enough money to spend anyways. We have enough capital behind us to just buy it, And there's a reason when you have a little lot of land next to a big conglomerate of someone that has a ton of money and they want that little piece of land. And they're going to overpay for that little piece of land because they kind of want it. And that's what the Reds found themselves in. And I think that we should feel fortunate that that was the case.
Let's talk about something that Trace just led with. Nick, where does Gavin Lux today rank on this Cincinnati Reds team in terms of quality of player? And let's just focus on offensive players. Let's not talk about pitching staff. I think, that probably dilutes this conversation a little bit. But offensively, where does Gavin Lux fit into this team today in terms of quality of player? Where do you rank him?
If you're talking just as a hitter, I mean, he's behind Ellie. I think he's behind McLean. I think it's closer than probably a lot of people think, just because I don't necessarily think it's a for sure thing Matt McLean's going to be able to repeat his one season in the big leagues coming off a whole year miss, just like Gavin Lux did last year. It's also possible Matt McLean also has that tough first half. I put him behind Ellie. I put him behind McLean. I would put him behind CES, and that's it.
Ty Steve?
I'd have him above Ty Steve. I think that all things equal, I think that Tyler Stevenson probably comes a little bit more down to earth, but I still think Tyler Stevenson is going to be a really, valuable player. So I think I'd have him fourth behind those three. Only offensively. Tyler Stevenson's a better overall player. It's not even close.
Okay, we'll do overall player, but the offensive players. Like I'm not talking just their offense ability.
I thought you were just saying hitting. Yeah.
No. I'm just saying, as a player, rank the non-pitchers on the Reds.
Then I probably have him ahead of CES because he can field. So, but I'd have him probably behind Friedel. I'd have him behind Stevenson. So I guess what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd have him fifth.
Okay.
I'd have him ahead of Steer.
Trace, how do you feel about that list?
I don't mind it. I think it's all, at this point, I know this is what sports talk shows do, but at some point, I think they're all close enough together that I'm not going to argue about it. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that there's a huge difference between Gavin Lux offensively and maybe Tyler Stevenson when he's going well. It all comes down to whether or not these guys stay healthy and play up to their capabilities. And that's really what burnt the Reds last year, is that you had a couple guys that had situations going on that were out of their control that I think affected them. I'm not trying to make excuses for Jake Fraley, but I also think, like, as a human, you could sit back and you could look at Jake Fraley's life, see what he went through, understand all the circumstances that exist, and be like, yeah, I can understand why you probably have a down year or you struggle a little bit. Matt McLean gets hurt. Noelvi Marte gets suspended what seems like the next day. CES gets hurt in the first month. You have what is basically the only thing that could have gone wrong last year that didn't was the bullpen was seemingly pretty good all season. And the Reds starting pitching was serviceable, pretty good. The only thing I would say going into 2025 that I would be concerned about regressing, because I'm not trying to jinx it. I don't think that the injury bug can get a whole lot worse outside of obviously some situation. Yeah, I'm knocking on wood. Yeah, offensively, yeah. But I would also admit that the bullpen could regress.
It's projected to regress.
It could regress.
Bullpen's a real big question mark.
And you get rid of it. And listen, I know the backup catcher thing's important, and I know Fernando Cruz is like 47 years old and he has one pitch. I get that. So I'm not acting like Fernando Cruz is, basically Mariano Rivera. But he was one of our he was one of our high leverage guys last year at a lot of spots. I get that maybe at the end of the year his stats didn't look as good as they could have, but we used him a hell of a lot. And he did a pretty damn good job for the most part. And now he's gone. So the bullpen's the one area that I'm pleading the fifth on all of it. I'm waiting until the year starts to start making some strong opinions. But as far as, again, this trade, home run for the Reds.
One other just quick point on Gavin Lux that I think will be nice is over his last 3 years, he's had a pretty solid strikeout rate. This guy does not strike out that much. He does put the ball in play. So that is a nice kind of compliment with the lineup with the Reds right now. You look at the Reds regulars last year where he would rank. The only ones that are better than him is Spencer Steer, just barely, Fraley and Friedel. I mean, he's significantly higher than, like 10% higher than Ellie and Marte, like 6% better than CES, about 3% better than Candelario. So he's a pretty good contact hitter as well. Probably doesn't, like, I didn't think that of Gavin Lux. I thought Gavin Lux probably had a lot more swing and miss, just kind of thinking about him, but the numbers do kind of tell a little bit of a different story there.
All right.
Any final-ish thoughts from either one of you at this point?
No, I was going to make a joke about, do you think that Nick Krall had this on the burner and it was sitting there and he was like, you know what, let's hold off on this. Let's wait until the Cincinnati Bengals are officially eliminated from the playoffs, and let's try to get all these people back in the Reds fandom. Think you did that?
I mean, I did yesterday. Once it was obvious that the Chiefs were going to lose that game, I went ahead and changed my outfit because it officially became Red season. So it is officially Red season, and even though the Bengals made some moves this morning, Reds are not going to let them outshine it during their season. Nick, final thoughts?
Probably had a little bit more to do with the Dodgers signing a second baseman on the most recent business day on Friday than the Bengals getting eliminated. But it is nice timing. So it is baseball season. Excited to see what's next. I don't think the Reds are done. I don't know if they're going to make the big sexy move that everyone wants, but I don't think they're done. And I still wouldn't be shocked if the Reds move a major league player off their roster at some point, because there is kind of there's not, like I said, there's not a lot of great bona fide options, but there's a lot of options. And could there be some wheeling and dealing to kind of, I don't want to say log jam, because you can never have too many players, and a lot of these guys have options, but I could see the Reds moving a big league player. So that's something I'll be kind of watching over the next couple weeks.
I'll ask the question. I know this answer, but question in the chat: do you think Francona was involved in this deal, or do you think it was just straight Nick Krall?
I really don't think Francona has a whole lot to do with the front office. I don't think in terms of player acquisition. I mean, I think he might say this is things that I like and things that I want to work with, but I can't be like, yeah, I want Gavin. I don't think he had anything to do with that.
I tend to agree. Yeah, I tend to agree.
Yeah. Last one. I'll put you guys on the spot. No promises on my math, but 34 days until pitchers and catchers report. Must make moves for this Cincinnati Reds team between now and March 30th, game number 1.
I don't think there's any moves. I think
Okay.
there's moves that would be nice, but I don't think they're forced to make any moves. I don't think they should. I remember when Teoscar Hernandez went off the board. People are saying the Reds have to do something now. I don't think they should go sign a bad contract or contract they don't believe in because they feel like they have to. I think that's what bad organizations do. So I don't think they have to do anything, but I think they should continue to be trying to do things to improve their team. Whether they get over that hump or not, I mean, that it is what it is, but they absolutely should be trying everything they can, every stone, every potential Gavin Lux trade that could fall in their lap, but I don't think they have to do anything.
I don't know if we could go down this road on this show, but you have to ask yourself the question of where you're at and what will one signing do for you ultimately overall that you might not otherwise happen to you regardless. And in a crappy way, what I'm going to say is the sum of the parts is always greater than one individual thing. And the sum of the parts, there's way too many question marks around it to go out and think that you got to go make a deal to get across the finish line. I'm sorry, but if Matt McClain doesn't stay healthy and TJ Friedel doesn't stay healthy and CES doesn't stay healthy, or they aren't the players we thought they were, and they underperform significantly, I got news for you. They could go out and sign Juan Soto. Yeah, I said Juan Soto. They could go get Juan Soto, and this team would not be very good. And I know that sucks to say. Like, you might think that they could have gone out and gotten quite literally the best player in the world in the outfield. That's not named, I don't know, maybe not named, Ohtani. But if that doesn't fix the problem, then ultimately, what are you trying to fix in the first place? And I think that that's where this Reds front office finds themselves, and they're going to have to make some hard decisions here soon on what they're going to want to do with what they have with some of these foundational pieces that they thought they had. And I think that us Reds fans, we have to basically pray. And I mean, there's no other way to say it. We have to pray that Ellie is an absolute stud that we all believe that he is. Matt McClain is not far behind him and or CES. I'd throw Noelve in there, but it seems disingenuous. But maybe Noelve too. I don't care. They have to be studs. They have to be above average players in this league for this franchise to be relevant. And then on top of that, the starting pitching has to be as good as we think they're going to be. And if that happens, you have a legit shot. You have a legit shot. But just because you go sign one outfield bat doesn't mean you're going to solve all the problems. But I'll also openly admit to Nick and everyone else, like, I think if anything else, it shows that they're willing to put their foot down and try to solve a problem that we all see. But to be fair, I don't know if it would actually fix it. And I could also rationalize as to why they might feel that way and not do something that would be like detrimental to the overall health of the organization as a whole. That's
another question we've seen in the chat a couple of times that I'll let you guys touch on if you want to. The question about Gavin Lux versus Santiago Espinal, at least in terms of the way that the Reds are apparently planning on using him as this kind of super utility player. Espinal last year was kind of this utility player for the Reds. I think Espinal is probably better defensively than Gavin Lux is. Offensively, I think they're probably pretty similar. I don't know that this necessarily means anything in terms of Santiago Espinal's role on this team as a utility man anyway, but is there anything wrong with having multiple Santiago Espinals at your disposal? Like, I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. Nick, Trace, any thoughts on this whole comparison with Santiago Espinal?
No. I think right now, Espinal's the platoon player, and Lux is a platoon player, and they're one's a right-handed bat, one's a left-handed bat. I mean, they're almost a perfect third base platoon if the Reds decide to use him in that option. So I love Santiago Espinal as a bench piece / play against left-handed pitching. I think he's really good in that role. I didn't love him in the everyday third baseman, which I recorded something a couple days ago, and I said, going into the year, that's the one thing I don't like the most, is that I don't really like Santiago Espinal as an everyday player, which is what he looked like he was penciled into at that a couple hours ago. So, I think that if the Reds go the third base platoon route with those two, I think it's almost a perfect platoon. Or I mean, not a perfect platoon, but it's a pretty good platoon. It's a quality third base. If Lux could play at third base, I just don't know the answer to
that. Other questions from the chat. I guess this comment's interesting. Nick Kroll is not a big splash guy. He's trying to improve the team fundamentally without blowing the farm. I think you can make a big splash without blowing the farm, but go ahead, Nick.
This wasn't blowing the farm, but I mean, this was your number 14 prospect and a comp pick that's very valuable. I mean, the player that you draft with the comp pick probably ends up being a top 10 prospect. So it's almost like you gave up 2 top 15 prospects for Gavin Lux. So I don't think it's a nothing burger in terms of giving up prospects, but I do think he's going to be pretty steadfast in not giving up the top prospects unless there's something that's just incredible that fits the Reds and doesn't, it helps them for multiple years to come.
Yeah. What about Ramon Laureano or Austin Hayes being Reds?
I think one of those type of players. I think there's going to be one right-handed bat that ends up on the Reds as that's an outfielder.
All right. Any other final thoughts before we wrap this up, guys?
No.
Go Reds.
Go Reds. Appreciate everybody in the chat, and obviously you, Craig, for being the mediator here.
Yeah, of course, always. Well, look, we appreciate everybody again. 400 people still watching an hour plus later. We really appreciate it. Trace, are you actually doing a golf stream? Is this happening?
Yeah, I'm doing a golf stream after this. Openly admit that I was saving my voice up for that stream that has been used now, which is fine. I'm going to still do my best for that stream. But yeah, members only. I basically have joined like an indoor simulation golf league that I'm just going to stream for people that want to watch. If they don't want to watch, that's fine. But last night I played Augusta National, and tonight I'm playing the Wynn Golf Club in Las Vegas. So we'll see how I go.
I just set it up.
Go ahead and say it. How'd you do at Augusta?
I think I shot 10 over from the very, very tip. So I play from exactly where the PGA Tour plays, just as like a reference. I could have played a little bit better too, but yeah, I mean, it's not terrible golf. It's just not, it's not Tiger Woods, but if it was Tiger Woods, I wouldn't be here, obviously.
For those of you that are interested, just real quick, Nick, if you aren't currently a member and are interested in becoming a member, you can click on, go ahead. What are you stopping me for?
Well, I redirected the stream to that. So you're going to automatically be redirected.
Well, you're going to need to be a member, though, to be redirected. And in order to do that, you can click on the Chatterbox logo underneath this YouTube video on your screen right now. And then you should see a button next to the subscribe button that says join, where you can become a member of Nutcutter Nation. Only $10 a month gets you access to many members only streams every single week. We do box lunch multiple days a week. Trace is going to be doing these golf streams. We've got a lot of content. Nick does a great job during the off season getting guests on, and oftentimes those are members only, at least early access. So certainly encourage you, if you aren't already a member, to go ahead and click over and join Chatterbox Sports Nutcutter Nation. We really appreciate the support. We appreciate the super chats throughout today's stream as well. Look, Chatterbox Sports is putting out constant content at this point. Chatterbox Bengals just wrapped up the season. Obviously, Jacob Tissett and I will be live tomorrow night to break down the Steelers win and the season as a whole. Off the Bench airs daily from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Chatterbox Sports. Chatterbox Bearcats, after every single Cincinnati Bearcats men's basketball game, along with some additional content throughout the season, previewing matchups and games and stuff of that nature. Sincerely appreciate it. Could not do it without all of you all. And again, on behalf of Nick Kirby and Trace Fowler, we really appreciate you joining tonight's stream. It was, as always, amazing to have everybody in the chat, and really appreciate your questions and keeping this engaging and going. And I know that I, among some others, tend to talk a lot, so appreciate you bearing with me as I work through my word vomit of thoughts. But on behalf of Trace Fowler and Nick Kirby, we do appreciate it. Be on the lookout. Follow us on social media, x.com, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere that you get your content. And we'll see you guys next time.